Thank you very much, Lena. And now Taylor, please come up. Thank you. Let's start.
I'm going to start on this mic. It's probably going to take a second to kick in, but I just want to start by thanking Lena for setting the tone of the day. That was really, really a beautiful way to start our morning. And I also want to thank the Women in Sustainability team for putting together such a wonderful summit. I'm so honored that I get to be a part of this day and share it with all of you. So I'm going to find the clicker so I can move my slides. I think this is it? No? Maybe. Yes, this is the clicker. So, like I said, I'm really happy that I get to be here today. I'm so honored to facilitate this workshop on networking with all of you today. And we're going to practice building confidence around networking and really transition our mindset around networking and moving away from thinking of networking as a professional transaction and think of it more about relationship building. So I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Taylor Wordsman. For those of you who do not know me, I am an assistant director at the Career Design Lab and the career coach for sustainability management and sustainability science students. I also am an adjunct faculty member and instructor for a course at the School of Professional Studies. So if you're an international student, you're probably aware of the Internship in Industry course, and I teach one section of that as well. I do want to sort of take a quick moment to, reset the tone of the day, as Lena already beautifully did for us, and just remind you all that as we practice networking and building the confidence to network, understanding that takes a lot of vulnerability. It's not easy to network. A lot of us, myself included, have some anxieties around networking. It makes us feel nervous. It's uncomfortable. And today is really about practicing getting more comfortable with networking and building our confidence around that. So I want everybody to know that this is really a safe space. As we work through some activities throughout this session, I want you all to know that I have no expectation of anybody being perfectly able to pitch themselves or talk about themselves in a networking setting. That's what the day is really about. It's about being messy and practicing and pulling our pitch together so that we are ready for networking situations when they come up. I hope that you leave today feeling a little bit more confident. And I know you have a networking lunch later on today, and hopefully you'll be able to take some of the tools that we'll talk about today and apply those to networking at lunch today. But I do want to just make sure everybody is feeling comfortable with each other in the room, because you are going to be working with each other throughout this session. So I want to just take a quick minute, if you can turn to the person sitting next to you or nearby to you that maybe you don't know already, and just introduce yourself, your name, what program you are a part of. I know a lot of you are from the sustainability programs, but not all are, and sort of what brought you here today, why you wanted to join this session. So just take a quick minute to do that. Take another 30 seconds or so. We will have a lot of time to chat with each other throughout the session. Okay, if I can re-get everybody's attention so we can get started on the session today, that would be amazing. I promise we will do a lot of interacting throughout this session. You'll be working with each other and have more opportunity to learn from each other. Thank you so much. So glad we had the opportunity to just have a brief introduction, getting to know one another, and you will continue speaking with the people around you today as we practice sort of building our confidence around networking. I want to start by talking about some of the sort of like learning outcomes, the goals of today's session, what the overview is going to look like. So I want to start by talking a little bit about the importance of networking. And obviously, I'm aware that all of you understand that networking is important. You probably wouldn't be here right now if you didn't think it was important, but I want to sort of dive deep into the various ways that networking is important beyond just the fact that we network to find a job. There are so many other reasons that we network, and I want to talk a little bit more about just how important networking is, especially in the field of sustainability, and especially as women or people from underrepresented groups and marginalized groups. After we move on from talking about the importance of networking, we're going to really get into the meat of the session, right? Talking a little bit about how we can overcome fear and build confidence around networking. So we'll start with identifying common networking challenges and barriers that many of us experience when it comes to networking, and then we'll talk through some tips and tricks to overcoming those barriers and feeling more confident in our approach to networking. From there, we're going to do what I think is the most important piece of building confidence, and that's practice. The only thing that really is going to make us feel more confident at the end of the day is practicing networking. And in order to practice networking, we need to know how to speak about ourselves. So we're going to talk about building our personal brands and practicing our pitch. And that will be really an interactive portion of this session where you all will work together to flesh out what exactly your personal brand is, how you want to be represented in the sustainability field, how you want people to view you, and then we'll start practicing your elevator pitch or your pitch for networking. And then I'd love to close out the session with some goal setting. I want everybody here to walk away from today's session with a few concrete goals that they can achieve when it comes to networking. And of course, we'll do a quick wrap up on key takeaways from the session. Okay? All right, so I want to start, like I mentioned, with why networking matters. And as I said just before, we all understand that networking matters to some extent. It's important to help us find a job. I'm sure you've all approached networking with that in mind. But I do want to get a raise of hands really quickly. If you are in the job search currently or ever have been in the past, how many of you have utilized LinkedIn, Indeed, or another job search engine to find a job? So pretty much every single person's hand is raised, right? Because that's the natural way that we think about finding jobs. But how many of you, and you can raise your hands again, have heard of the hidden job market? That's a lot of hands. Does anyone want to shout out what the hidden job market means? Yeah. Whoever wants to read it? Yeah, non-posted positions. And does anybody know what % of jobs go unposted? You can just shout out, you don't need to raise your hand. 80. Almost 80% of jobs are never publicly posted. That means you are not seeing them on LinkedIn, you are not seeing them on Indeed, you're not seeing them when you search on Google. These jobs are only being posted on internal servers or by word of mouth. And the only way to tap into the hidden job market is, you guessed it, networking. So that's why we really want to focus on networking. But maybe you're sitting in the audience and you're thinking, well, I'm not looking for a job. I don't want to work for a company. Maybe you want to start your own business. Well, if you're an entrepreneur, networking is just as important, if not more important to do. Because networking, when you are thinking about starting your own company, is all about spreading the ideas that you have. You want to find somebody who will invest in your company. You may be looking for somebody to co-found your startup with you. So that's why networking is going to be so important. You also want to be able to increase your visibility and your influence, not only if you are an entrepreneur looking for a startup, but anybody in the field of sustainability. By networking, you are able to meet with policymakers, with NGOs, and increase influence to see the change that you want to see in this world. Again, networking also is so important, especially in this field of sustainability that is so values-driven, so passion-driven. You all are part of or interested in sustainability for a reason. You care about making a change in the world, and through networking, you're able to find a community of people who share similar values to you. So, now that we've talked a little bit about the various reasons that networking is so important, beyond just I do it to expand my professional network, we know that it really is the key to our success as individuals, as people in sustainability, beyond just finding a job. I want to talk now a little bit about how we can build confidence around networking. So we understand now that networking is crucial to our success, but it's also really difficult. And like I mentioned earlier, I know that myself, maybe all of you, some of you have experienced some level of anxiety or nerves when it comes to networking. So I want to start by identifying a few common challenges when it comes to networking. So I have 3 on the screen here. And the first is imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome really refers to that feeling of self-doubt when you walk into a room or you're in a situation. It's that feeling of, is somebody gonna find out that I don't belong here, that I'm not competent enough to be here, I'm not experienced enough to be here, really doubting yourself. And it's a very, very common feeling that most people experience at some point in their life. And it's important to acknowledge that it's okay to have felt this way. We don't need to feel any shame around having imposter syndrome or be embarrassed that we have felt that way in the past. But the goal of today is really reframing our mindset around imposter syndrome. It's important to remember that everybody or most people have felt this way at some point. Even the most successful people in a room have experienced feelings of self-doubt. And like I mentioned at the start of today, I talked a little bit about how today's session we have to be vulnerable, right? Networking is a vulnerable thing to talk about, to practice. And I'm, going to just share with you all, imposter syndrome is definitely something that I have experienced. And I want to share sort of the way that I've experienced imposter syndrome and then how I have been able to reframe my mindset around imposter syndrome, to take what I once perceived as my weakness and now perceive as my value proposition. And I hope that after we go through this today, you can all start thinking, if you've ever experienced imposter syndrome, A, what was the reason behind it, and B, how can we reframe the mindset around it? So for me, I mentioned in my introduction that I teach a course at SPS. And when I first became a lecturer of this course, I was 28 years old. And I felt like an imposter when I started teaching this course because I thought, I'm too young to be doing this. How am I ever going to compare to professors at Columbia who have years of teaching experience when I don't? And I felt a lot of self-doubt around it. But over time, I realized that what I once perceived as my weakness, being a younger faculty member, is actually a strength of mine. Because I'm younger, I teach a professional development course, and I am able to bring a relatability aspect and factor to my students. I also understand generational differences and am on top of similar trends to my students. So being able to reframe what was once perceived as my weakness, and sure, there are things that older professors with more experience have that I do not have. We each bring a unique skill set. That is our value proposition. There is no expectation that we have every skill possible, but we focus on the unique skills that we can bring to the table. Next, I want to talk about unconscious bias and gender norms and navigating male-dominated spaces. So as women or people from marginalized groups, it is very, normal to feel these extra barriers put in place to assert ourselves due to stereotypes that are put onto us by society. And it makes networking that much more difficult, especially if you are in a male-dominated space. And I want to talk a little bit today about how we overcome those barriers. How do we advocate for ourselves to be confident and in our shoes and in owning the space that we're in? So we're going to talk a little bit in a few slides from now about the power of role models and mentorship and how much that will come into play, as well as the opportunity to join professional associations where you can meet people who are like-minded, meet with more women, and people that can bring you up and lift you up in networking. And then finally, fear of rejection. So fear of rejection is a really common challenge when it comes to networking. It's hard to walk up to somebody if you're at a networking event and you have this fear of maybe they don't want to engage with me, maybe they don't want to have a conversation with me, or maybe you're doing a lot of outreach over LinkedIn and you are fearful that nobody is going to respond to your outreach messages. And so that fear actually stops you from trying. So when it comes to rejection and networking, a quick, ugly truth that I'm going to tell you is that you have to be comfortable with rejection when it comes to networking. Not every single person that you network with or try to network with or outreach to is going to have the capacity or the bandwidth to be a part of your network, to have conversations with you, to build a relationship with you. And that's something that we do have to get comfortable with. And we can start getting comfortable with that by recognizing, that is not personal. So we have to stop internalizing the reasons that people are unable to build relationships with us when we're networking. You have no idea what's going on in their professional life, in their personal life, what else is on their plate. So it's really almost never about you. It's more about their bandwidth and their ability to take on a new relationship. So you will get more comfortable with rejection the more that you practice networking and conducting outreach. You'll see that some people are going to be responsive and wanting to build that relationship and looking to bring you into their network as well. And others will just not have the time. And we just move on from those people who are unable to support us for this moment. So now that we've sort of identified a few very common networking challenges, I want to talk through some of the tips for overcoming them. So I already mentioned with imposter syndrome, that one of the really important pieces of overcoming imposter syndrome is reframing and thinking about your value proposition. So reminding yourself, and we're going to take a minute after this slide to sort of talk through this amongst each other, but what are things that you perceive as a weakness of yours, and how can we reframe that to be a strength of yours? So maybe there's somebody in the audience who is a career transitioner. So maybe their imposter syndrome stems from the fact that they feel insecure walking into a room of sustainability professionals who have been doing this work for 10 years. And maybe they are transitioning, let's say, out of HR into sustainability. So they feel like, how am I ever going to have conversations with sustainability professionals who have been at this for 10 years and I'm just coming in? That's a totally reasonable fear to have, but we can also reshift and reframe that thinking. What unique skills does that person have from HR that nobody else in the room is going to have, having worked in sustainability for 10 years? So really thinking of your unique value proposition. It's also important as we overcome imposter syndrome to focus on our small wins. So if you're sitting in the audience and maybe you're a student who is fresh from undergrad into a graduate program, you don't have a lot of professional experience, so you feel maybe nervous to network with more experienced professionals. Focus on your small wins. What are projects that you've been part of that you're proud of? What are you passionate about when it comes to sustainability that you can talk about? That's a really important one when we think about networking as sustainability professionals. Again, coming back to the point that sustainability professionals have similar values and passions beyond just a typical job. You all care deeply about impact and making a change. So whenever you're feeling nervous, if you're networking with somebody, you're having a conversation with somebody, let's say later on today at this lunch, you feel nervous talking to one of the panelists that you'll get to meet later, a really great way to start is just to learn a little bit more about what interests them about sustainability, what passions do they have within sustainability, and starting a conversation from there. Another great tactic, if you are feeling imposter syndrome or nervous in general, any general anxieties around networking, is to seek advice, not validation. Not every networking situation, and I actually want to sort of stray away from this thinking and feeling that networking is selling ourselves. Right? Networking is not always or all the time about selling ourselves. It's about building relationships. And a great way to build relationships is to learn from somebody. So if you're feeling nervous and you don't know exactly how to speak about yourself or feel that you don't have enough experience to contribute to a conversation, approach it as a learner. Asking a professional if that letting them know you're really interested in the field that they're working in. You would love to hear a little bit more about the projects they're working on. How did they land this job? What was their career trajectory up until now? When it comes to fearing rejection, so I know I already spoke a little bit about the fact that the truth is we have to be comfortable with rejection. But that being said, I also want to talk a little bit about strategies that we can employ to overcome some of that rejection, especially when it comes to conducting outreach over LinkedIn. So reaching out over LinkedIn, as I already mentioned, not everybody is going to be able to respond, and that's not something that we should ever take personally. Especially, I know that many of you, and it's a great strategy, is to reach out to alumni of the programs that you're a part of to connect with them. And I continue to suggest that you all do that, finding alumni that have similar interests or working in positions that you are interested in going into. But also recognizing that if you're doing that, it's also likely that a lot of other current students are doing the same thing. So their inboxes might be getting flooded with messages, and they might just never see your message, which is why we follow up. But I want to talk briefly just about that initial outreach message. I was recently, some of you maybe were at the event at the Career Design Lab last week with the ACA Group, which is a management consultant firm that works in sustainability. And the two speakers that were at the event are both alumni from the Sustainability Management Program. And I asked the question to them, what catches your eye when somebody reaches out to you? What makes you want to respond? And the answer was not, I'm looking for somebody with the most experience. I'm looking for somebody with the most skills. The answer was, I'm looking for somebody with the most interest. I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for somebody who can express to me that they're passionate about this field. And the second portion, which is what I want to highlight in terms of rejection, I think that sometimes you don't get responses to messages on LinkedIn, not because you haven't expressed your authenticity, expressed your value proposition, talked about your skills. It's because you haven't made an ask. You just say, I would love the opportunity to speak with you. That's really putting a lot of the work on their plate to schedule time to meet with you. We want to make it as easy as possible for the people that we are outreaching to connect with us. So the alumni of the program, his name is Julian, he said what works the best for him is when they say, I would love to meet with you. Do you have time to chat on and offer time and dates? Don't put it in their field to have to come up with a time that they're available and then find out if you're also available. Again, we want to eliminate as much work as possible for them and do all of that work up front. So really focusing on being authentic, showing your interest, and making the specific ask that you want. Always focus on the ask. And we'll talk a little bit more about the ask during our pitch. And I would also say, the second piece that comes into play with that is do your research on the company. Go into any networking calls already knowing information about the company so you can just start talking about the work that they're doing. And it looks good to the people that you're speaking with to showcase just how interested you are in the company that they work for by doing that background research. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit more about overcoming biases and gender norms when it comes to networking. So one of the most important and influential pieces of this is going to be finding mentors and role models to look up to that will inspire you and guide you along the way. So looking for people who have been in your shoes, who have had success, that can lift you up and bring you into success. They can also introduce you to their network so that you are able to find more people to connect to. One really great way to find mentors and to find role models, or just more generally expand your professional network with people who have similar values and passions that you have, is through professional associations. I'm curious, just by show of hands, are any of you a part of a professional association? A few of you are. So what I would say after today, and maybe this will be one of the goals that you put down at the end of the session, is to do a little bit of research on professional associations. There is a professional association, Women in Finance, that has a branch that's focused on sustainability, and I know that they have a mentorship program. And that is true of most professional associations. So by doing a little bit of research and finding professional associations that are in line with your values, the field that you want to go into within sustainability, seeing if they have mentorship programs available, knowing that they likely all have events that you can attend, networking opportunities. And by joining a professional association, you're really tapping into a very strong network. Professional associations also share job opportunities. They have professional development workshops. There's so much opportunity to explore by joining a professional association. So I definitely encourage you all to do that. And again, that's a really great way to not only find, we'll talk in a minute in the next slide about the difference between a role model and a mentor, and through a professional association, you can actually find both. But I do want to take a minute now and have everyone turn to each other. If you're comfortable to speak to each other about this, and if you're not, you can write in your laptops or your notebooks if you have them. Maybe one of the fears that you've had around networking, and then taking a look at these tips that we've just gone over and seeing if there's a way that you can reframe that fear or overcome that fear. And you can get as specific as when we were talking about imposter syndrome, maybe there was a fear that was driving that imposter syndrome, and how can you reframe that the way that I shared that I was able to. So why don't you all take 3 or 4 minutes. You can chat amongst each other, or this can be a silent activity. It's your preference, whatever you're comfortable with, and thinking about the ways that you may be able to overcome some of those fears you've had in the past. take another 30 seconds and then we'll come back. Okay, I want to bring everybody back to the session. I'm curious if anybody is comfortable and would be willing to share with the larger group what you and your partner spoke about. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think you all can hear me. I have a strong voice. I'm Nikki, and Julia. What Julia and I talked about was how I just walked in here and saw you all, but was afraid at first because I was like, those are young people. I don't know what they're up to. They probably go to Columbia. I don't want to go there. But the topic is what got me, right? It said women of sustainability or something. I think I saw, and I was like, I'm in women's work. I do women's work all day. Let me go find out. But I hesitated, right? And so I was saying to Julie, I was like, what I had to do was move through my own hesitation and go, wait a minute. It said women. You work with women. Why wouldn't you be in a room with women? But we said that we cut ourselves off. We say no to ourselves before anybody. We don't even ask the question. We're already saying no. Oh, that's not for me. I saw these two ladies down there getting ready, getting cute, coming in. And I was like, oh, they must be some presenters or something. They're like sisters, right? Yeah, I was eavesdropping. Yeah, and so like all of that was going on, but in my head, right? And so I am clear that even at the stage that because I'm not working, I don't do regular work anymore. I'm building a business, and so the thing is, I don't want to tell people the name of the company. Men get offended, some women get offended, and I go, the only way I'm gonna know is if I actually do it. And so even at this stage, in the rebranding and the rebuilding, there's this question.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Yeah. And it's so true. I think so often, especially as women, we allow the hesitation to stop us from being able to pursue the things that we want to pursue. And that's because of these stereotypes and biases that have been placed upon us. But that's really where, and you did this for yourself today, it sounds like, self-advocacy really comes into play. And really just like stepping into your confidence, owning that you deserve to be here as much as anybody else deserves to be here. And by doing that, you're reaping the benefits of it, right? So I hope that you're happy that you joined us today and that you find it valuable. But it really is a great example of why we need to advocate for ourselves and not let that initial moment of feeling like, wait, do I belong here? Should I come into this space? Stop us. You take a minute, you think to yourself why you do belong, think of the skills that you bring, the perspective that you can bring, the value that you will add, and you step in with full confidence that you're going to be able to shine. Does anybody else want to share? Yeah, Ari?
Coming to the conversation with questions and coming up to whoever is in this space and is an expert in expressing your interest in learning more. And I think the other person will be very receptive because everybody loves to share what they know. So I think that's, instead of a hindrance, it's a great opportunity to open the door and open the conversation. Go, Liz.
Yes, that is amazing. So true, right? We don't have to be an expert to be able to network. You can network as a student learner. And it's really about that reframing of selling yourself in networking and instead reframing it as building genuine relationships, coming in with curiosity. And it is really important, especially if you know yourself to be somebody who gets nervous when you network, come with some prepared questions in mind. Think about the types of questions that you want to ask to the people that you'll be meeting. and focus on seeking advice, right? You don't always have to be speaking about yourself. You can seek advice, and I think that's a really great piece of advice that you just shared with us, which is, really preparing those questions. That can be very helpful in making us feel a little bit more comfortable approaching a conversation when we already know a few things that we have in store that we want to be asking. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, everybody, amongst each other and with a larger group. I really appreciate it. All right, so I do want to move on to talking a little bit more about the power of mentorship and role models. So I first want to sort of identify and distinguish the two because they're not the same, but are both important to leverage in your professional journeys and when it comes to networking. So a role model is somebody who is typically from afar that inspires you, that you have seen their career trajectory or where they are now, the influence that they have made, the impact that they have made on the sustainability world, and you are inspired by the work that they do. A role model is typically a one-sided relationship. You don't need to personally know somebody for them to be your role model. Again, this can be a role model could be somebody who is influential in the field of sustainability, somebody who is at the top of the field. It could be a faculty member can be a role model, although they could also be a mentor. We distinguish the two by a role model really is a one-sided relationship, whereas a mentor is a two-sided relationship. So it's really a two-way street when it comes to mentors. And a mentor is going to be somebody that you know or would like to get to know, and they're able to provide guidance on your professional development and your career journey. They often can bring you into their networks, introduce you to new people, help guide you along the way. And both are really important, especially as women in a space that can often be male-dominated. It's helpful to have mentors and role models to continue to inspire us and push us forward towards our goals, especially on instances where maybe we're feeling doubtful, maybe we're having moments of imposter syndrome or just doubting ourselves. And by relying on a mentor or a role model, it can provide that inspiration to keep going. You can learn from your mentors or read about your role models and how they were able to make it into the place that they ended up in. How did they push forward in times of uncertainty? I'm sure that they've experienced the same feelings that you all have or will experience in the future, and a mentor can really be a grounding force and an ally through all of that. I think that at the end of the day, when we do goal setting, I would really love everybody to think about who they have in mind that they could consider a role model. And if you don't already have a mentor, you can start thinking about who you would want to be your mentor. You don't have to have the answer today. Some of you might not, but maybe you do have somebody in mind, and thinking about how you can bring them into your network to continue to guide your professional journey. All right, so I want to talk now a little bit about key takeaways on building confidence, and then we're going to do the thing that I said I think builds the most confidence, and that's practicing. And that's when we're going to get a little bit more interactive, talking about your personal brand and developing your pitch. But before we get into that, I just want to focus on some of those key takeaways, right? So reframing networking as being a professional transaction and considering it to be relationship building. When we reframe it this way, we realize that we don't have to be experts. We don't need to know everything. We don't have to be perfect. We just need to be curious, show up authentically as ourselves, and find people who share similar interests and values to us. Like I already mentioned, confidence really does come from practicing. There will be times when you are networking that it feels uncomfortable, that you have anxiety or feel a little bit nervous. The more that you practice, the less you will feel that way. It is really a repetition cycle to get more comfortable in doing that. Interviewing is very similar. If you interview once, that first time, you're feeling really anxious because you don't know what to expect. But if you interview constantly, you're 5 or 6 interviews in, you start to get a sense of the rhythm. You know the questions that typically get asked. You feel yourself, a little bit more confident about it. The same exact thing comes with networking. You do it once and it's unfamiliar to you, so you feel uncomfortable doing it. But if you practice it and you continue to practice it, you start to understand the flow of networking, the right questions for you to ask, some of the questions they may ask, and you will become more confident in approaching networking. As we talked about, mentorship and role models are really valuable to help guide your goals. So seeking mentors, joining professional associations, finding role models to continue to inspire your journeys in sustainability. I know Lena mentioned it during the moment of mindfulness this morning, that the work that you do is so important. And it's more important than ever to continue doing that work, and there may be challenges ahead in doing your work. And that's why it's going to be ever important that you find people, allies, and mentors, people like-minded to you to support achieving those goals. And we're going to do at the end of the day is set some actionable and realistic goals. It's not helpful when it comes to networking if we set unrealistic goals for ourselves that we cannot achieve, right? Then you just end up feeling a little bit worse about yourself for not having achieved something you set out for. So we're going to spend the last little bit of the session today setting realistic goals of networking so that you can achieve those goals and then consider them wins and help build your confidence. And the last thing is really just to bring your authentic self. Nothing shines through more than authenticity. And that's something I hear time and time again from people who are often approached by students to network, from people who are interviewing students. Nothing shines through greater than authenticity. You could be the most skilled expert, but if you're not being your authentic self, that really comes through, and people want to engage with others who are passionate about the work that they're doing, who have curiosity about the work that they're doing, who are able to bring really their most authentic selves. And being authentic does not mean being perfect. It just means being you. All right, so with that, I want to talk about you. We're going to talk about your personal brand and developing your pitch. So this next portion of the session will be mostly interactive. We're going to get a sense of what your personal brand is, how we define a brand, and then how do we communicate that brand through pitching ourselves. So I want to start with corporate brands. If people could just shout out a few brands that you admire and why. And it could be any brand. Say again?
McDonald's.
And why?
They have good french fries.
I agree. I love their fries. Thank you. Anybody else, a brand that you admire and why? Why?
Because they're very brave in trying to embrace sustainability at the expense of their own profit.
Great, thank you. More brands that you admire and why?
Ben & Jerry's.
Love. Why?
They're like an active ice cream.
Great. I love Ben & Jerry's too. Anybody else? I'm sure you all have brands in mind that you admire and a reason for admiring them. And the reason that I'm talking about corporate brands is we come to admire specific brands like McDonald's for their good fries because we consistently know what we're getting when we go into a McDonald's, right? You know you're going to get fresh, hot fries with some salt on them. Patagonia, you know their messaging is consistent in sustainability. You know what to expect from these brands. That's what makes them admirable. That's why we buy into these brands. When brands are inconsistent with their messaging, or we don't know what to expect from them, they don't succeed the way that brands that are consistent do. So I want you to reflect on how we can talk about that as our personal brand. So the same thing really goes for personal branding. We want to be consistent in our messaging of who we are as professionals. We want people to have expectations of us when we speak about ourselves. And when we're not in the room, branding is really what people say about you when you're not in the room. So if there's a group of professionals talking about you, what are they saying about who you are as a professional? And that is really your personal brand. So what is your personal brand? And I like this graph or diagram down here on the bottom. So your personal brand is not entirely just how you see yourself. If you are not able to represent how you see yourself in a way that is communicated to other people, that's not really your brand. It might be how you think of yourself, but you need to be able to communicate that to other people. So it's really the intersection of how you see yourself and how others see you. And to define your brand is really the impression that you leave on others, and it's a blend of your skills and your values, your vision, and your expertise. So in order to define your brand, you need to know what are your core values. What are your core values when it comes to sustainability? How can you identify your strengths? Again, thinking back to that value proposition. Value proposition is huge. It's really the skills that you bring to the table, the unique value that you can offer. And then crafting your vision, being able to speak about who you are now and also who you would like to become. What do you see for yourself in this field? And again, really being consistent in that messaging. You want people to understand consistently who you are as a professional. So when it comes to developing our personal brand, or maybe we're rebranding, if you're a career changer, you might be rebranding yourself into the field of sustainability, it's really important that we reflect and do a self-assessment. We want to understand ourselves first before we can communicate to others who we are. So you're going to be thinking about your interests, what kind of work that you like doing, your personality traits, who you are, your accomplishments, again, thinking about the skills that you have, maybe projects that you've worked on that you're proud of, your lifestyle preferences. Are you somebody who's going to be known for being a workhorse who works all the time, or do you want to be somebody who's known for their work-life balance? And then also considering your work values and environment preferences, the types of work that you want to be doing and the places that you want to be doing it. So we're going to take maybe 5 or 8 minutes doing a brief self-assessment. And I want you to work again in pairs to come up with 3 words that you would use to describe yourself in a professional setting. What is one skill or quality that you're proud of? And how would you want others to describe you professionally? So if you could all just turn again to the people you've been speaking to, or maybe find somebody new to speak with, and start thinking through these 3 questions that will help form your personal brand. right, let's bring it back. How did that feel, talking about ourselves? Is it a little uncomfortable to have to talk about ourselves, things we're proud of? Maybe, right? Sometimes it can be uncomfortable at first to speak positively about ourselves, right? To highlight our accomplishments. That's not always easy. So I'm glad that we're getting that practice in right now because, again, it is important to be able to speak highly about yourself when you are networking and certainly when you're interviewing, to be able to speak to your skills, your accomplishments, the way that you might describe yourself, especially professionally. So I want everyone to hold on to what they just spoke about. We're going to get into another activity where this will come back into play and start forming your pitch. So keep this in mind. We're going to do another activity in just a few minutes, and then I will ask when we get to that activity for people to start sharing again with the larger group. Okay, so now that we've started talking a little bit about what your personal brand is, we need to speak about, again, your personal brand only goes so far as what you can communicate about yourself to somebody else. And that's why we're going to talk a little bit about your pitch. So there are a few different types of pitches. Today we're focused on a networking pitch, also known as an elevator pitch. There's also an interview pitch, and that's the answer to the dreaded question that comes in every interview. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And that is when you have 60 to 90 seconds to talk about yourself and highlight your achievements. But today in a networking pitch, it's an elevator pitch, which we know is called an elevator pitch because it should take the time to ride an elevator. So we're talking about 30 seconds to pitch yourself. And that at first might not seem like a lot of time, but when you're speaking about yourself, 30 seconds is a long time. And we want to practice getting to that 30 seconds, talking about who we are as professionals and sort of where we want to be going when we're networking. So quickly, a pitch, right, we already understand it's an impactful statement that really highlights your skills and your expertise. It's where you have the opportunity to talk about yourself, your personal brand. And it's really an effective way to demonstrate your professional aptitude. When you're meeting with other professionals, you do want to be able to share the skills that you bring to the table. And again, this can be used in many different situations. You know, you pitch yourself all the time. It's not just when you are formally networking. You're also networking all of the time, whether you realize that or not. Yes, there are times where networking is more formal, like a networking event in person, but meeting your peers on the first day of school, you are networking with them. Every single day, any interaction that you have with people, you're really networking, you're pitching yourself, you're talking about yourself. Whether or not that's in a professional landscape is different, but being able to talk about yourself is important in many different regards. Of course, today our focus is networking. So working your pitch into conversation, you want to be able to introduce yourself, and not only when you're pitching, especially in person, vocally pitching yourself, speaking is one thing, but there's also the way that you move your body, creating this aura about yourself, demonstrating that you are confident in the words that you're saying. And that's really important when you think about your brand, is really creating an aura about who you are and who you want people to view you as. You want to be able to demonstrate to others your beliefs, your values, and your abilities. And you want to be able to influence them. So again, we spoke earlier, if you are an entrepreneur or not, that influence is so important, especially in the field of sustainability. You want to be able to influence change, make impact. You can meet with policymakers, NGOs. You might be trying to create impact in a startup. And you want to be able to work all of that into your pitch. And again, if you are an entrepreneur, you're pitching yourself a lot, not just in networking situations, but maybe you're pitching for investors, you're pitching to clients, you're pitching to find a co-founder. And then again, that last piece, own your differences. Oftentimes, I think we view our differences as insecurities or weaknesses. And I really want you to walk away from today being able to reframe those differences into your value proposition. If you don't mind sharing really quickly, how many students here are international students? A good deal, right? And when it comes to the job market and job search as international students, you have unique challenges and barriers that domestic students do not have. So I think it's really easy, and oftentimes we hear that it feels like a weakness because it's harder for international students to find jobs. But I would argue that you have value that domestic students don't as international students. So yes, you do have additional barriers in place. There are, legalities around your visa and finding somebody who's willing to sponsor you, and it is more difficult. But how can you reframe being an international student to your benefit? Do you speak more than one language? Do you have, new culture that you can bring in? Perspectives that they don't have, more of a global mindset. So thinking again about any of these areas that we may view as being our weakness or our insecurity or something that makes it harder for us to achieve, reframing that mindset into your value proposition, your unique skills. Okay, so now we're going to work on developing your pitch, and we're going to work through an activity called Wow, How, Now. And Wow, How, Now is really an activity that will structure what an elevator pitch should look like. And you want your elevator pitch to start with a wow. What makes you unique? The wow statement is going to be really that hook line when you are pitching yourself to somebody to get them interested in who you are. And then once you move past the wow, you're moving into the how, right? What do you do and how did you get there? How is it that you do what you do? Talking a little bit more about your skills in the how. And then now, you're shifting to the present of what you're currently doing. It's also your opportunity to make an ask. So if you are networking or maybe outreaching to somebody and the ask is that you want to have a coffee chat with them, the now is where you can work that into your pitch. So we're going to work through a few exercises. We're going to break it down, focusing first on your wow, and then on the how, and then on the now. And then at the end of the session, we'll put it all together to be one fluid pitch, wow, how, now. All right, so a few ideas to help you get started on thinking about how you can craft your wow statement. Again, the wow is really that hook statement. And so think about what is it that you easily do that other people have to work harder at? What do people compliment you on? What do you find yourself doing just for the joy of it? What activities make it feel like time's just flying by, like you're just getting into the zone of what you're doing? And what would you do even if you were not paid for? I want to highlight also being in the sustainability field, which is so, as I've said already today, values and passion driven. Your wow statement can really highlight your passion. I am passionate about, fill in the blank, and talking a little bit about that to hook the people you're talking with. All right, so we're going to do a little activity of what is your wow? How can you start talking about yourself in a way that is going to engage the people you're speaking with? And a very easy format, a simple format that we can follow is I am a blank who blanks. And I want people to turn into pairs in a minute to come up with 3 I am a blank who blanks about themselves. 3 different ways that you could fill in those blanks to speak about yourself professionally. And, it's up to you if you want to use the I am a blank who blanks. That can just be sort of a simple structure to follow. It doesn't need to follow that structure. It can just be what makes you unique, how you stand out. But I can give you a quick example for myself. If I was networking with somebody, I would probably say something like, I am a career coach who empowers sustainability professionals to carve out their careers in a global landscape. So that would be my wow. And that is I am a blank who blanks. So I want everybody to turn to each other and think about how you might craft your wow statement. Spend about 5 minutes doing that, please. Back a slide? Yeah. 30 more seconds. All right, how did that feel? Did that go well for everybody? Do I have anybody who wants to volunteer what maybe they came up with for their wow statement? Yeah, Rita. We have somebody with a mic coming for you.
So this is definitely clunky, so please forgive me. I think I'll just be loud enough if that's okay. So I'd say I am an organizer who seeks to bring action and awareness around biodiversity loss and social justice.
That's great, yeah. And it doesn't need to be, again, people who are sharing, it doesn't need to be perfect, although that was amazing. Really highlighting very quickly, grabbing our attention with who you are as a professional and what your skills are. So can I have anybody else volunteer? Again, highlighting that this needs to be nowhere near perfect. This is just sort of a rough draft of what a pitch can look like. Thank you.
I don't even know. So I said that I said I'm Nikki. I'm Nikki Brown, and I am the Coochie Coach, and I empower women to have babies beyond the age of 35.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I loved how punchy that was, right? It really drew our attention into who you are. We understand who you are, but it really captivated the audience as well. So thank you. One more person willing to share? We don't have to. We can move on to the next. I know it's not easy to share in front of so many. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, you got this. So I came up with, I am a Bangladeshi and Trinidadian photographer that takes photos of unique aspects of my heritage to tell stories no one has ever seen before.
So cool. Thank you. Amazing. You all did a fabulous job sharing your wow, right? Like, you just told me something and I want to learn more. Like, I want to know more about what you do, the photographs you take. That's amazing. That's exactly what the wow statement needs to look like. It should captivate somebody so they want to learn more. It's that first line to get people interested in knowing who you are. Okay, so then once you've worked out your wow statement, where you've captivated us, we want to learn more, tell us how you do what you do. So the how is your opportunity to focus on your skills. And you'll see here, top 10 skills from 2013 and top 10 skills from 2020. If you read through both lists, for the most part, the 10 skills, I think there's just one that fell off and one new one on 2020, but the skills are the same. They've fallen into different numbers, but these skills are skills that stand the test of time as being, you know, the skills that people are looking for across industries. And that's complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision-making, service orientation, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility. So thinking again, now that you have your wow of who you are, what is your how? How is it that you do what you just told us that you do? So I want everybody to take, okay. Yeah. So I don't want you to worry about sounding braggy. You want to be speaking confidently and positively about yourself. So if you've done something cool that you're proud of, if something that is part of like who you are at your core and in your profession, you should share that. That is what captivates people and wanting to learn more. So being confident into stepping into, this is who I am, and I want to share that with others. I would, just throw bragging out of your mind, right? Like, you're not bragging, you are pitching yourself. You are talking positively and confidently about who you are, the skills that you bring, your values that you have and bring to the table. Yeah, so definitely. I think it can be helpful to have a few different wow statements, and you'll probably have a few different versions of your pitch. And what you decide to say and how you decide to pitch yourself will likely depend on the environment in which you are pitching. So who you are talking to in that moment and what you want to convey exactly to that person. So definitely having a few different wow statements generated, thinking about the different things that you would want to speak to. Maybe it's you're going into a networking situation because you're looking for a job, or maybe you are looking for community. So those pitches might be a little bit different based on what it is you're looking for, what your goal of networking is for that day. Thank you. Thank you for those questions. Does anyone else have any questions before we go on to the how? All right, so I want everybody to now take a few more minutes in pairs to think about how you can bring that wow to life, right? So you have captivated us, but now you need to tell us how it is you do what you do, being able to showcase your core skills and how your work sets you apart, and maybe describing a little bit of what your process is. So again, if you want to turn into your pairs and spend 3 to 5 minutes working on that. take another 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to bring everybody back, just taking a look at the time we have left. How did that one feel, talking about our skills, our how? Does anyone want to share? Yeah.
I'm already up here and my shoes hurt, so you're going to use it.
I love your dress, by the way.
Thank you.
Definitely easier than the wow. And I think thinking through my skills took me to, and same happened with my partner, revisit what our wow is and how we want to frame it.
Yeah, that's great. I think that can definitely be true, right? Like we're going piece by piece, but sort of the whole thing comes together. So it might be easier to start with the skills to get to how you want to like captivate the audience before talking through the skills. Thank you. Anybody else? Does anyone want to share sort of what their how statement looked like along with the wow? No? Okay, we can keep moving on. We are now going to move on to the now. So what's your current situation? What are you currently doing? Where are you looking to go? Or do you have an ask, and what is the ask? So during that now portion of your pitch, you can make the ask. So an example of that might be, I'll speak sort of out of example of myself. Sort of like as a career coach right now, something that we're really looking into is how we can leverage AI in career services. So my ask, depending on who I'm networking with, might be that I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about leveraging AI in career services. I'd love to learn a little bit about how your office has brought that in. Do you have some time to chat with me about that? That's an example of a now statement with an ask in it. Yours might be that you're currently studying sustainability management at Columbia and are looking to go into blank, right? And then maybe you have an ask around that. So I want everyone to take 2 or 3 minutes, turn to the person next to you. What is your now? What are you doing right now? Where are you looking to go? Do you have an ask? Okay, does anybody feel like they want to share what they're doing now that they would work into their pitch? Thank you. You're going to get a mic, I think. Right over here.
Probably like this is what I have that is the most clear now between like wow, how, and now. Basically, I'm a policymaker. Have worked in a central bank for 9 years. I'm coming back to school to build hard skills and to really understand how private sector actually do things in terms of pushing transition to a low carbon world. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to share their now? Yeah.
Oh, darn, you in this microphone. I'm asking it right now in real time. So I'm currently working on making sure that the brand that I'm building is in like a Web3 world as it pertains to people being able to have babies. Because I want you to be able to use your algorithms. You don't have to leave. You should have a doula at your hip. So how I started is creating an app. And the ask is if you have an iPhone, that you would download the app and give me feedback. So that iteration 2 is better. And each time we get better and better with it.
Great. What was the name of the app?
It's called the Coochie Coach Official or something like that. I think that's it. It's the Coochie Coach Official app on iPhone.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we can all maybe download that and provide some feedback. All right, so the final piece of all of this is putting it together into your wow, how now. So you've had your wow statement, and then you added your how statement, and then you put your now statement. But can you talk about it fluidly in one as your pitch? So I want everybody to think about how you can blend the 3 statements to be a cohesive pitch of yourself, right? So you're sharing who you are, how you do what you say you are, and then telling us a little bit about where you are right now and if you have the ask at the end. So I want everyone really quickly, 1 minute, turn to the person next to you and try to hash out your wow, how now. It can look clunky and messy. It does not have to be perfectly streamlined. It's just the first time that you're practicing it, right? We talked about we got to practice to get it to a fluid place. But just take 1 minute. Each of you share your wow, how now all at once. Fifteen more seconds. Okay, I'm gonna bring everybody together again. We're almost finished up with our session. How did that feel for everybody? Starting to feel like you're getting a little more comfortable talking about yourselves? Understanding what it might look like to pitch yourself? Do I have any brave soul who wants to try to practice in front of everyone, putting their wow, how, now together? Amazing, thank you so much. You're gonna get a mic, I think.
Hi there, my name's Brienne, and my wow how now currently is I am a project manager who seamlessly organizes chaos by understanding diverse perspectives and creating synthesis, and I'm currently looking for a job in the conservation space and would love introductions to companies who are hiring.
Thank you so much. That was a really great wow, how now. You've done a nice job of captivating us, talking about the work that you do, and then I really like that you made that ask at the end, that you are looking for introductions to companies working in conservation. I think, as we pitch ourselves and we become more and more comfortable with it, we can add a little bit more of our skills, lengthening out that pitch to be a little bit longer. But that was an amazing initial wow, how now. Thank you for sharing. I know it's intimidating to have to do it in front of a large group, so I appreciate you doing that. Would you like to try as well? Oh, or question? Yeah. Yeah, so you can use the idea, the premise of wow, how now in your outreach message. I would make sure in the now that you're getting to that ask, and you're gonna wanna keep it brief. So a wow, how now in an elevator pitch is like about 30 seconds of you talking. So it's gonna be a much briefer message than that over LinkedIn. So you want to, it'll be a little bit more punchy of like, the wow statement, what your skills are, and the now sort of letting them know that you are a current student and you're interested in setting up time to talk. I would also say, though, what's different in an outreach message that you wouldn't do necessarily upon meeting somebody and pitching yourself is if you are reaching out to somebody that you have some shared connection to, like that they graduated from sustainability management or they went to the same college that you went to undergrad, you're from the same city, whatever it might be, any sort of shared commonality, start with that. That will hook them the most. It's human tendency that we connect to people who are like-minded to us first. So if they see that you have something in common, you're gonna increase the chance of getting a response. So I would start there if it's somebody that you do have any sort of shared interest to. All right, so that really brings us to the end of our session today. The purpose of Wow How Now, again, this was your first endeavor of doing this, and it shouldn't be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's sort of just to start warming you up to the idea of pitching yourself. And again, really getting in the habit of practicing doing that. So continuing beyond today to think about how you'll pitch yourself in future networking situations. And I hope that you've, come out of this feeling a little bit more comfortable talking about yourselves. You've done a wonderful job talking amongst each other. I know you have this networking lunch later on. So really thinking about what skills you want to share with the people you'll be networking with. What asks might you have from some of the panelists that you'll meet today. And I also want to say, I didn't know that you guys were doing this, but I love that you did the stickers on the name tags. That's an amazing way to make introductions to people, especially if you're feeling nervous. Now you have something in common with them, so you can approach them about that topic. So that's a great way for today's lunch to start networking with people. All right, and then really quickly, just want to talk through a few of our key takeaways and then take a minute to do a little bit of goal setting. So really, our key takeaways in building confidence around networking is number one going to be authenticity, being yourself, showing up genuinely as who you are, and when you are networking in those connections to bring your authentic self forward, because that is what people will react to the best, is when you are being authentically you. And then when it comes to confidence, I've said this a number of times now today, but practice really is what makes perfect. The first time we do anything, everybody starts somewhere, everybody has a first time, and the first time you do it, you're probably not going to feel comfortable doing it. But the 10th time you do it, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable. The 20th time, even more so. So just continuing to practice networking, starting small with some realistic goals that you can achieve. You don't need to outreach to 100 people tonight, but maybe over the next 2 weeks, you'll outreach to 5. And take it from there with small, realistic goals. And finally, when you think about networking, really reframing from thinking of networking as a professional transaction and thinking more about these meaningful connections, that you're building lasting relationships in the sustainability field and that they are mutually beneficial. You have something to offer as well as the people that you are networking to. And with that, I want to take one more minute just to do a little bit of goal setting, and this will just be, if you have notebooks, I think everybody got a notebook today, if you can write out a few goals that you have for yourself around networking. And I want them to be realistic goals, achievable goals, so really thinking about how you can make these smart networking goals. And everybody is going to have unique and different goals when it comes to their networking, but you will decide for yourself in the next few minutes what that's going to look like. Maybe your goal is going to be to outreach over LinkedIn to 5 people per week. Maybe your goal is going to be identifying potential mentors and role models. Maybe your takeaway from today is that you're interested in joining a professional association and you want to do a little bit of research on finding a professional association that would be a good fit for you. Again, you want to start small with your goal setting. Make it so that it's achievable for you, realistic, given all the other things that I know you're balancing on your plates right now. I know that some of you might be graduating soon. Some of you have your capstone or coursework, or maybe you're currently working, whatever it might be. So I know that there's more than focusing on outreach and networking. So making sure that whatever you choose today for your goal really fits in to the rest of your workload. So I'll leave you all with that and goal setting. I just want to thank everybody again for being here today. It was really a great session for me. Loved hearing from you all. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and are able to start putting to use some of these tools that we talked about today. Thank you.